And I was asked this question this morning, and it's come up many times actually over the past few weeks in this anger. And I wanted to spend some time looking at this. Someone asked me this morning, what is attention? And I thought it was a really brilliant question because for a long time in my own journey, I was sure that I knew what attention was. And perhaps even more specifically, that I have to get attention to come back to the real self. And for a while, for all of us, that is how it is. Attention seems to go to our old sense of self again and again, to who we think we are, the thoughts going on in our mind. And there's a certain pulling power of those thoughts. There's a seductive nature to those thoughts. They're alluring, right? The attention seems to want to go to those thoughts or to some experience or some emotion. And for the longest time in my own journey, imagined journey, I felt powerless over the attention as if I had no control at all. And that even if like we practice here in this teaching and meditation, if I bring my attention back to what is real, which is the formless oneness, the consciousness, the presence, pure divinity, pure sentience before form. And that's not something far away. Let's experience it right now as we're listening. What is it that's aware of these words? What is it that's aware of whatever your eyes are taking in? And can you recognize that whatever is aware is not a person? And so began to investigate that this attention, why is it so elusive? Why can I not make it stay on this, whatever this is? I'm going to call it presence today, I think. Apparently, that's what the mouth is saying. Presence that is our real nature. They're all names for the same no thingness that has no name. Presence, when we bring attention back to it, the body responds accordingly. The mind slows down, the body relaxes, and everything seems much more pleasant. When attention is on our old sense of self, our thoughts about reality, about ourselves, about you, about me, all of this, about our problems, the body responds accordingly. The body says, no, this is not true. And there's some negative emotions sometimes, contractions in the body, and a lot of thoughts. And it seemed to me to be the answer for a long time that at some point I would be able to bring my attention back to presence and it would stay there. This, for such a long time, this was the goal I was chasing. And if you've ever tried this, you realize it's impossible. Attention moves back to thoughts. You bring it back to the presence. You have a nanosecond, maybe, if you're lucky, of and then it's back to thoughts, and it's and this is going on and on and on. And as this pendulum swing gets narrower and narrower, you don't even get to rest in the good place, the attention being on the presence. It's just doing this. It's getting to this point where there's just intolerable and unbearable. Something has to give. At this point, I was trying even harder to keep attention on presence, thinking that there must be some magical way. But little did I realize that the only reason for bringing attention to the presence was to now allow enough life force to come into the body and mind to actually have half a chance of seeing what's true. It was never the goal to keep attention on presence. Attention is something that moves by its very nature. It will pay attention to things. It's looking at this thing, turning around to look at presence, and then it goes back to a thing, a thought, an emotion, an experience, presence, thought, presence, emotion, presence. And I couldn't see a way out of this. Finally, it began to become clear that maybe the problem isn't what I think it is. Maybe it's not that I can't manage to keep my attention on presence. Maybe it's that I think I have to do that. And as I began to investigate this, it became clear that maybe attention is actually not what I think it is. Because I was meditating one day and there was the sense of presence. And I noticed that when presence is consciously noticed, when presence is present to itself, our awareness is aware of itself, our stillness is resting as stillness, that there is no attention. You can check this out right now. If you notice awareness or presence, whatever you want to call it, emptiness, nothingness, divinity, God, the real self, the noumenon, that which is formless, if you notice it, attention disappears. Attention is just not there. There's only presence. It's gone. I began to really get curious, like what is actually happening here? And after a lot of struggling and suffering, it became clearer that attention appears. It's a form that happens in front of me, a subtle form, as I think I'm looking at a form. So if a thought arises in my mind, attention arises simultaneously to look at this thought. The thought and the attention show up together. My mind said, well, which one comes first, attention or the thought? If I could get rid of the thoughts, it wouldn't matter where attention is. Or if I could get rid of attention, I wouldn't be able to take the thoughts personally. And of course, it seemed like a really, really good idea. Finally, I realized that attention and the object we're paying attention to are the same thing. That you can't separate attention from the thought. You just can't. The moment there is something to look at, there is the capacity to look at a thing. And this open presence that just is somehow pulls off this amazing trick of being able to look at one part of itself, a thought. It's calling it a thought. And it kind of zooms right in to look at this one tiny piece of itself. As if you're standing in a football stadium and there's 100,000 people in this stadium and you're just kind of taking it all in. And all of a sudden, one guy stands up right on the front row and starts going crazy. And everyone turns and looks at this one guy. And to do that, you have to ignore everything else. Everything else. And so this is why attention will never stay in one place because it doesn't exist until it does. Once I figured this out, there was a lot of relaxation. So while it seems to be there, we can direct it back to the presence. But at some point, there's going to be a realization that only when I think there's something to look at does this very subtle form of attention appear. It is a form, an object, subtle. In this open presence, this formlessness that has no location is present everywhere all at once and cannot be divided into parts. Where's attention going to look? It just is, where is it going to, where is the presence? Attention just kind of disappears and there's just presence. There's no thing to look at. So you begin to see that the object you're looking at, the experience, the emotion, a contraction, pain, a thought, whatever it is, even energy moving, anything at all. If you think that that thing is a thing, then attention will suddenly appear out of nowhere, literally out of nothingness, out of presence. Presence somehow imagines itself to be capable of looking at something. And then we've got this problem of what to do with attention, how to make it stay in one place. As you realize the attention that's looking and the thing that you're looking at are the same thing, they both disappear spontaneously. Or they're both seen to be the presence. That which is looking and that which is being looked at are made of the same presence. And this isn't something you can puzzle your way through and struggle to understand. It's just enough to listen lightly to this, not to try hard. Maybe I should have said this at the start, but anyway, we're already into it. Pretend I said that at the start. And just listening lightly with a maybe more curiosity as to what attention is and if it actually really exists, because sometimes it really seems to do. And it seems to be like a wild, crazy horse, right? That's running all over the place, doing its own thing, totally uncontrollable. And in other times, the experience of the real self is just I am. Presence is. Consciousness is. There's nothing to pay attention to. So it's never attention and fear, or attention and a thought, attention and a contraction in the body, attention and a lack of money, or whatever is going on in our lives. It's always attention and appearing as also whatever the phenomena is that we're currently paying attention to. And it's called paying attention because it costs us energy to imagine that we can take some section of the allness, the totality of the presence, which is totally indivisible, a small section out of it and call it a thought. And to do that, we have to ignore everything else in that moment. When your attention's on a thought, everything else is gone, right? I mean, you're just not able to focus on it. What use is all of this in your awakening? Well, just to relax a little bit around this attention thing, that it isn't our goal to kind of have it disappear even, or we're just trying to treat it more lightly, maybe letting go of the idea that it's our job to make it come to rest or anything like that. In the end of our journey, attention is seen to be just another subtle object that we really need not pay any attention to. There is no other word. Attention is just another subtle form that arises that is seen by you. The presence. Right now, you know that your attention hopefully is on these words. Or you know that your attention has wandered off to what am I going to have for dinner later? Or perhaps it's wandered to the thought, I've got no clue what this woman is saying. Or whatever the mind is doing. Wherever it is, attention cannot exist without the idea that there's objects to pay attention to. When attention goes, all the objects disappear. They don't literally disappear, but the suffering and the labeling and the rejecting and the pushing and pulling and all that stuff stops. Because all these apparent objects then are just experienced as presence. There's nowhere, no capability inside presence to interact with apparent objects at all. It is totally intangible and formless. How would it even interact with anything? And then it's seen that anything is just arising, a shape made by that presence. The totality of presence is appearing as a thought or a human body. And actually, it doesn't need to do anything about anything, nor does it have the capacity to presence. So can we get this really, really simple? What value is this talk to your awakening now? Simply just to be a little more curious about what attention is. To not be so sure like I was that I know what it is. That it is this wild, crazy thing that is constantly untrainable. There's this great big myth that awakened beings finally managed to bring the attention uh, under control and got it to stay on the presence. But actually, what actually happened is the capacity to pay attention to anything, any object, any form disappeared. Even if what we used to call a thought pops up, an emotion, it seemed to be presence in disguise. Really, what's the point in giving it any specialness? And then a thought or an emotion are just the same as a table or a tree. Absolutely experienced, there's no difference. All experienced as presence itself. Just taking this very lightly, that maybe the big problem I think I have in my awakening isn't really what I thought it was. Maybe the two things cycle off each other. The idea that there are things to pay attention to when really there aren't. They're all the appearances, ripples on the surface of presence, still presence. And the idea that I can pay attention. So the idea there's something to pay attention to and attention itself. Both arise spontaneously and both disappear spontaneously when it's clearly understood. Can you perceive an object at all if you don't pay attention to it? Is that even something that can happen? Have you ever noticed attention without anything to pay attention to? Attention has to be looking at something, right? And the thing and the attention are one. So in your meditation, when you're trying to bring attention back to the infinite self, the presence as we're calling it, do we ever actually succeed at that? The instruction is to bring attention back to presence, but actually what happens is attention disappears and there's just presence. In the relaxation of the intention, I'd like to bring attention back to presence. There's a opening in the presence and it stops fixating on a thing and just And the mind says, I did that. I did it. I brought attention back to presence. But it's never happened. Attention just disappears and then there's only presence. Attention and the apparent object disappear and there's only presence. So you can either question what attention really is, or you can question if the object you're paying attention to really exists in the way that you think. If you're ready for the quick door out of all suffering, be willing to question if any object exists at all in the way that you think it does. This used to terrify me when I'd hear teachers speak about it. Oh my God, the whole thing's going to just disappear and I'll be sat in this black abyss of nothingness. But actually, the senses perceive the exact same thing as before. But the mind isn't dividing it into parts and labeling wanted, not wanted, awful, ecstatic, good, bad, awakened, not awakened. That whole capacity falls away. The presence recognizes itself to be appearing as all these phenomena. That there is nothing other than presence. So next time you bring attention back to presence, if you really watch closely, you'll see that attention disappears. Best thing to do is to prove this to yourself. You cannot actually be aware of awareness. There's just awareness. You cannot rest in the stillness. There's just stillness. You can't listen to the silence. There's just silence. Even to say silence listening to itself, we might use that as a concession, but it's not really true. Consciousness, being conscious of itself, it's a total lie. Just consciousness. And then later, attention and apparent object, and then consciousness, and then attention and apparent object, and then consciousness. So while attention seems to be there, redirect it to its source, and at some point it will disappear. It doesn't mean you're an automaton and you can't drive a car because if a car pulls out in front of you, you're not going to react. The body and everything else still functions exactly the same. But without the attention zooming in on the car, there isn't this barrage of thoughts afterwards. Why did he do that? He almost hit me. Why did I come this way today? All of that stuff just cannot happen. The car pulls out, the foot goes on the brake. That's it. It's a much different way to live. So if you feel a resonance with what's been said, don't try hard to do anything with it. In fact, don't try at all. It's the best way. Just kind of, I'd like to deeply get that experientially. Just a real gentle, yeah, I'd like to, or maybe you have got this experientially. Maybe you came to Satsang half asleep because you've had a full day at work and that served you kind of half, that really served you well to be half asleep because you couldn't really try to do anything with what was said. You were just kind of listening. And something just unfolded itself inside presence. But if you did try to do something with the words, it's okay. You'll get another opportunity in the next moment.